Okay, so good morning again. My name is Benoit Denis. I'm with CLAT, and so the purpose of this talk today is to give you flavor of the main outcomes and the vision of RIS-CG in terms of RIS-enabled localization and sensing. So I will make this presentation on behalf of Enquimish, who is actually the work package leader of work package 5, which is the work package in charge of those applications. So if you allow me, I will just start by thanking and acknowledging the other partners who have been actually contributing to this work package. So University of Athens, MEC, Aalborg University, and also NEET. So the main objective of this work package 5 was to see if and to which extent RIS-enabled networks could outperform RIS-free, let's say, localization, more conventional approaches in terms of both accuracy and or availability, or if you prefer, service continuity. So for its sake, the research activity has been divided into two different tasks. The first one was devoted to RIS deployment strategies and RIS control to optimize localization and sensing, while the second one was devoted to the design of estimation algorithms. By localization, we mean here the determination of the localization of the connected UIs, while sensing here refers to, let's say, the localization of passive objects. So this obviously includes also mapping of the environment. So it's more like a rather like fashion, if you will. Okay. Okay, so in a conventional wireless localization system, as you may know, we out of the received signal, we want to extract radio metrics, which are location dependent, so typically delays, power, angles, so on and so forth, and which relates ultimately to the user location. But unfortunately, despite, let's say, even let's say favorable theoretical performances, even the most promising technologies still suffer from severe limitations in practical cases. So this includes radio obstructions primarily, but also, let's say, poor geometric configurations, or let's say poor connectivity, which in turn leads to also ill-conditioned problem if you, for instance, do not cannot rely on sufficient number of measurements. Last but not least, also the multipass propagation channel is still viewed as the, let's say, source of nuisance, although it could convey very relevant geometric information, which is still, let's say, underused and uncontrolled. So one way to, let's say, improve or increase the both the quantity and the quality of such geometric information is to rely on RIS. And in work package 5, we have been mostly considered the reflect modes and also the receive mode, or let's say the hybrids, which combine both actually. So more concretely, what are the main benefits expected with RIS in the context of localization and sensing? So this has been already more or less alluded by George during the tutorial presentation, but one first aspect is to boost localization accuracy in, let's say, in a timely fashion. So typically to get adapted to local needs or requirements. So here, for instance, you can see the heat map of the position outbound. So if you compare with the situation with the three base stations, let me just, okay. Okay. Yes. So here we have 3 base stations. So if you consider now adding one more RIS, you see that you could enjoy say accuracy gains in a region which is close enough to the RIS, while in the other parts of the scene, the gain would be let's say less significant. Another aspect is to enable localization in situations where, let's say, more conventional system would fail or would require more resources. So typically here on the left, in case of NLOS, you can rely on 2 RIS reflections in the far field, or even one single RIS reflection in the near field. And here on the right, in the CISO downlink scenario, asynchronous scenario, you would need up to 4 anchors to get the user location, while you can only rely on one single base station and the RIS on the right. So depending on the role, let's say, and the status played by the RIS, so typically if it's an integral part of the network or if it's another entity to get localized, we came up with a bunch of physical deployment proposals. So typically here, if you consider reflective RIS in a base station-based scenario. So as I said beforehand, you can rely on both the direct path and the RIS reflection, or on two different RIS reflections. You can also imagine to get a mobile RIS localized by leveraging one reflections, so from transmitting base stations and received by a set of other base stations. We have also considered cooperative localization. So here in a multi-RIS, multi-user setting, so typically you can make use of the side link here between the two vehicles and also exploiting the RIS reflections. You can also still in the base station free context, you can perform through a full duplex simultaneous user localization and environment mapping by exploiting typically the multiple bounds here signals that enables you to localize also the scatterers around. Finally, you can also imagine to consider the RIS in the receive mode. So typically you can exploit the uplink transmissions from end user. And so the signal is received at multiple RIS and in such a way that you can perform classical triangulation, for instance, or you can also monitor the uplinked traffic of random active devices around, and such a way that you perform like on-site learning of the radio maps. So this includes, for instance, static features of the environment in such a way that you are able to detect new incoming, for instance, moving obstacles or objects. In terms of RIS control, so to optimize localization and sensing. So first, the RIS controller is the entity of the architecture in charge of determining the RIS space configuration that shall be physically applied at the RIS. Here you can apply different beam policies, so it can be directional. For instance, if you can leverage the prior knowledge of the user, you can also inherently benefit from the angle information in this case. You can also implement derivative beams to be more sensitive to some specific direction or let's say dimension of space. You can perform also random beams in case you don't have any prior knowledge about the user. Or you can also go for multi-beam in case you want to perform typically a multi-user localization. But the key point here is that you can, in any of those cases, you can still design the RIS phase configuration in such a way that you improve positioning performance, and you can take into account the scenario itself. So depending whether you can rely on multiple base stations or multiple RIS. So this includes architectural and geometry aspects of the problem, but you can also leverage different kinds of prior knowledge about the UE. So not only the UE location itself, but typically the uncertainty region around this estimate in such a way that you can perform typically constrained beam scanning or even sampling beam scanning, for instance, by taking into account the probability density function associated with this estimate. In terms of, you can also take into account the RIS hardware limitations. So typically, if the reflection coefficient at the RIS have been pre-characterized and included in a lookup table, so this can be taken into account while designing optimal localization optimal phase configuration. And last but not least, you can also intend to improve performance in a specific geometric near field regime. So here are three basic examples. So those are recent results issued in the context of our package 5. So in the first case here on the left, you see, so we are in a full duplex, so, and the point is to account for the uncertainty region around the user. So here we want to optimally illuminate this region. So through a specific risk control and risk-based design, we are able to optimally eliminate this region while accounting for the probability density function of the user. So the uncertainty region is split in terms of smaller grids, and we sequentially we apply optimal beams to address each of those grids. On the extreme right, you would see that, for instance, here we perform jointly base station pre-coding and RIS configuration optimization. So typically here in this context, we see that the optimal beams from the base stations would consist in applying a directional beam towards the RIS in such a way that we increase the SNR typically, while both the direct pass from the base station to the UE and the reflected pass from the RIS to the UE would consider implementing both directional beams and derivative in such a way that we are more sensitive for the sake of estimating the angle of departure at the RIS and the base station. Last but not least, so if we extend this concept in a near field regime, so we would see that the optimal beams at the RIS, so by using one unique RIS reflection here in this case, we would consider applying not only the directional, but all the successive derivative with respect to the different dimensions of the, let's say, of space in a spherical representation. Okay, up to now we have set the system in favorable conditions through risk control in such a way that we can guarantee the best conditions to estimate the localization, but the estimation itself still needs to be performed. So here are the three main steps. So first, we want to estimate location independent channel parameters out of the received waveforms. So this is first level of estimation. And then, of course, these parameters will feed either the localization of connected UE or RIS, or the sensing of passive objects. So here again, three basic examples. So on the extreme left, you will see that we intend to estimate.
We're running out of time. If you can just speed up.
Yeah, that's my last slide. So
okay, perfect.
Yes. Okay. So here we see that so through a specific tensor signal processing, we are able to estimate both the delays and the angle of arrival in the SIMO uplink positioning scenario. And we also estimate here the angle of arrival and departure at the RIS in such a way that at the end of the day, we are able to perform jointly the estimation of the UE location and both the localization and the orientation of the RIS itself. In the middle figure, you see that we leverage in a near field regime, geometric near field regime, we leverage the velocity of the user to compensate for the small Doppler effect that would be induced by mobility at at different elements of a large RIS. And on the right, you see that so through specific precoding and combining at the UE side, we are able to detect the multiple bounced paths. So not only the UE to the RIS and the scatter point, but also the other way around. And so these, for each of those resolved paths, we are able to compute analytically a probability map, detection probability map, and this can be further fused through specific filtering. So in this case, it's based on Poisson multi-Bernoulli filters. Okay, so this will be the final slide. So in a nutshell, we have come up with a bunch of proposals. So not only in terms of theoretical contributions and algorithmic proposals, so regarding risk deployment, risk control, and also estimation algorithms, so estimation for the extraction of location-independent channel parameters, but also for localization of UE and RIS, and ultimately also the detection and mapping of passive objects in the environment. So all those contributions can be found in the deliverables and available online in the website. We have also provided several proof of concept lab validations, so including single base station localization at 28 giga and self-localization at 60 giga. This will conclude my speech. So I thank you for your attention, and yeah, sorry if it was a bit fast.